But within our funding round documentation, within the shareholders agreement specifically, you need to indicate to your investors what your company trade's going to be, so you can enter whatever is appropriate here. And you can see that this wording that we're entering in this box forms part of a bigger sentence. So the sentence is, business means blah, 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 as more fully described in the business plan. So the blah, blah, blah needs to be replaced by whatever your business trade is. When do you plan on exiting the business? This is not an obligation, so nobody is going to legally hold you to this, but it's really just an indication to your investors, whether you intend on exiting 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever it happens to be. Nobody can legally hold you to it. If you have indicated that you're running, that your funding round includes SEIS and EIS investors, we'll actually drop any mention of this from the shareholders agreement. If you include wording like, the company intends on, the founders intend to exit the business within 5 years, sometimes HMRC can spot that and they'll raise a query. So we drop that from the shareholders agreement anyway, just because it can cause problems. Like I say, you're not going to be held to it in any event, so don't overthink that one. We then ask you what restrictive covenant territory is appropriate. So each of the founders, when they sign up to Founder Catalyst, we produce paperwork for you like a founder service agreement, and you have other restrictive covenants that are detailed in the shareholders agreement. One of those restrictions is around, if you leave the business, it's a fairly standard protection for shareholders that you can't just create a competing business for a certain period of time. So we ask you for a restrictive covenant territory so that bounds where you can't create the business, if that makes sense. So it will say you can't create a competing business within the United Kingdom within, over the next 2 years or whatever the period is. So it really bounds what territory you're restricted from competing in. United Kingdom is usually appropriate unless, if your startup is worldwide, it may be worldwide, or it might be, very regional. If you're opening paddle courts in Hampshire, for example, this may be changed to Hampshire because an investor may think, well, actually, if you open a paddle court in Humberside, it's hardly going to impact on this business. So it's really very specific to the business, but usually I think UK wide is a fair balance. The last item is very rarely used. This is around allowing flexibility of dividend payments across share classes. So founders love the idea of creating, if you've got 2 founders, you'll create ordinary shares for investors, and you'll create one class A ordinary shares for one founder, B ordinary shares for the other founder. And what that in theory allows you to do is issue dividends to just A ordinary shareholders or just A and B. So basically issue dividends in lieu of taking a salary to one or both of the founders, and not issue those dividends to investors at the same time. To be honest, investors hate that. Firstly, investors don't want you taking dividends out of the business. Investors want you swinging for the fences and, growing a great business and exiting. They don't want money leaving the business via dividends. Secondly, dividends can only be paid out of what's called distributable reserves, or in short, that means profit in the business. For the next few years, most startups in the early stages just aren't profitable at all. So there'll be nothing to distribute via dividends anyway. And thirdly, investors, if there is any distributable reserves and profits, investors, even though they probably only own 15, 20% between them, they don't want founders taking out 100% of the dividends. They want a pro rata get their percentage as well. So for lots and lots of reasons, it's almost certain your business will never create a dividend anyway. And even if it does, it's very unlikely that the investors will agree to you taking that out as a kind of alphabet shareholder, as it's called, alone, and not allowing the investors to participate as well. So for that reason, this is usually set to no. There are some quirky corner cases where it's useful though. So that's the second slider out of 7 done.